OMG's boys, girls, in-betweeners, Red Game here, back with another episode of the Mix-Up. And this time, I'm going to talk about something a little bit more obscure in terms of what we do normally. I want to talk about something called virtue signaling within the FGC, the fighting game community. Now, as I said, this is a bit more obscure. This is not something which I think is really talked about, and I think it should be, because I feel it's quite pervasive and it's kind of the dirty little secret that we're all aware of but don't want to acknowledge. So, what do I mean? Well, let's jump right into it and find out. So before we can talk about this, we have to talk about what virtue signaling is as a whole. Now, if you don't know, virtue signaling is a term that's commonly used in political discussion. It's used to show that you don't necessarily care about a topic that you might take issue with, but that you're more concerned with earning acceptance and credibility by appearing to have the high moral ground. Good examples of this would be when people are labeled as being racist, Marxist, or xenophobic, when there's actually no evidence to substantiate the claims that they're actually being made against them. However, I'm not here to talk about those issues within the arena of politics. What I want to talk about is how the same theory can be applied to within the FGC itself. So let's look at the FGC itself. What is the FGC? Well, like in politics, the FGC is a place where appearing to have credibility and being seen as someone who has a popular opinion carries a lot of weight. It's actually quite ironic how it's not really entirely different to having to deal with cliques of popular kids which you have to contend with in high school. Essentially, the more social currency that you have in terms of having good opinions and good tastes makes you a more popular person that people tend to agree with. In addition to that, having credibility and a reputation as being a strong player will cause people to side with you, so they in turn have a chance to gain their own social currency as well. So how does virtue signaling work its way into the FGC? This becomes an issue when, as I said previously, people want a quick and easy way to build their credibility in the social circles and media of the FGC. The best example is Capcom. Now, if we're going to be honest with ourselves, there would be no FGC without Capcom. They've created some of the most popular fighting games of all time, including Third Strike. Street Fighter 2, the original Street Fighter, it would just not be the same or nearly as big and popular without Capcom. There's no getting around that. Now, by the same token, if Capcom were to fold overnight, if we woke up tomorrow and there was no more Capcom, they'd gone bankrupt, into insolvency, had to sell off all their assets, it would be an absolutely devastating blow to the FGC. It would set our community back years in terms of trying to find a foothold in popular culture and trying to compete against other emerging esports like MOBAs. Of course, that is actually a topic for another episode. But what's curious is that in spite of this really obvious fact, this thing that everyone should obviously know, it's become a very popular pastime within the FGC to bash Capcom. People like to state that its games are either trash or dead and actively dissuade people from buying them. If you want to look at where this began, I think it began around Street Fighter 4, but it didn't really gain traction until the gem and on-disc DLC fiasco in Street Fighter Cross Tekken. I'm not here to debate if those were good ideas, I'm just stating a fact. Those two things were what completely buried Street Fighter Cross Tekken, and it was largely caused by the huge social backlash that came with that, how it became just the most popular thing and the easiest thing in the world to do, to state what a terrible game it was. And look, it was a game that had its flaws, but those two things were really what drove home the death of that game as a whole. Now, since then, there's been a very vocal portion of the FGC that tries to gain credibility as being the true hardcore players by saying that games like Tekken 7 are, for example, vastly superior to Street Fighter 5, because it doesn't have a good tutorial or tutorial at all, really. They just tried to use the story mode to get that across, and a precipitously high skill barrier to entry. Basically, unless you already know how to play Tekken to a good degree, Tekken 7 is a very difficult game for someone to learn to a competent level without investing a huge amount of time. Now, obviously, someone who wants to make this argument won't admit to it, because it would invalidate their argument if they did, but I certainly believe that this is the case. Now, the same thing is already happening with Dragon Ball FighterZ, for example, where people are using it, and have been using it even before Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite came out, to try and bury the game, which, when you look at MVCI, it's a flawed game. You know, there are huge problems with the presentation and the roster, but it's also a really fun game to play if you've ever tried it. It's tremendously enjoyable at its core, but people don't care about it if they can see that as an easy way to build those brownie points, to get that social currency about being a hardcore player. Now, this problem isn't just limited to Capcom. This can happen when discussing any fighting game. Basically, the rules are that the more obscure and difficult a game is to play, the more people will tell you that it's a superior experience as a result. In addition, there are also personalities as well. I don't want to name names for the sake of starting an argument in the comments, but I think we all know that there are some prominent members of the FGC who people will bash as being sellouts to look like they themselves will have more integrity. So how is this all toxic to the FGC itself? I believe this kind of behavior really hurts the FGC as a whole because it creates infighting and schisms, and let's be honest, if you're out to hurt a game and that game as a result does not sell well, it's not going to get DLC or a sequel. So this is really an instance where you would be cutting off your nose to spite your face. In addition to that, it also creates an echo chamber where people won't think critically about what aspects of the community are good or bad. Instead, all they want to do is look good to their peers by regurgitating the same ideas they've already heard. Another problem is that it can isolate or dissuade people from trying to involve themselves in the community because of a single mistake or miscommunication. An example would be that if they make one poor comment in public, a mistake that everyone's going to do at some point, it can create a huge backlash on social media that is not warranted or justified just for the sake of people being able to ride the hate train. And lastly, I feel like this notion that people just need to toughen up or grow a thicker skin really dissuades new people from trying to get into a genre that is notoriously difficult to learn. Why are we making it harder for ourselves to bring in new players when there are much easier routes? You know, that old saying of one will catch more flies with honey than vinegar. So that's about all I really have to say on the topic at the moment. You are welcome to disagree with the points that I've raised in this video. This is an opinion piece and nothing more. I'm not stating facts, I'm only making arguments for how we can try to improve the FGC as a whole. That's what creating a dialogue is all about. I want to hear your thoughts and opinions as well. If you disagree, if you feel like I'm taking this too seriously, then by all means, let me know down below. If you enjoyed, please leave a comment as well or a like, and if you didn't enjoy the video, you can always just mash hatefully on that dislike button as well. It's right there next to the like button, it's not hard to find. But that's going to do it for me right now, guys. Kisses, hugs, and belly rubs. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see all of you very soon.